It's true story. You just moved to Japan. You can actually share with me how you feel, what is tough, what is fun part.
Yeah, let's see. So having moved here, I found that everybody's really nice and very appreciative when I'm trying. I have way more opportunities to practice here now than I did in the United States. So I'd say between my lessons with Yui and
Mm-hmm.
now, I've had to kind of like both. It's kind of weird. I've been practicing a lot more, but in more situational things, and then not
Mm-hmm.
practicing as much because I've been dealing with so much with the move. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where I land now. Like, I don't know if I'm better or if I'm worse. I feel like I'm kind of learning newer things, but I've applied a lot from our lessons with Yui. So it's been very helpful.
Amazing. Amazing. I can see that you visited Japan Language Factory for the first time was December 17th. So it's almost
Yeah.
like 5 months ago. And how did you find us, by the way?
One of my coworkers, Tom Moore, he's taking I think the second level now.
Yeah, yeah, it's actually third levels. Right. So it was the same kind of company and same actually department. Thomas was working with you and he introduced you.
Yes. So before I took this job, I came out and visited to learn more about what the company did out in Japan. And he had recommended this course as, like if I was serious about coming here to try and take this to get kind of a jump start into conversation. And I would say he's been right. It helped me a lot. I've been able to kind of jump into very basic conversations, provided that the listener is patient and is willing to listen to somebody who's kind of slow still. But I'm definitely more confident having done the class.
Amazing. And then where are you from originally? And then since when you started thinking about moving to Japan or want to work in Japan?
Well, I'm from the Atlanta area. I moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and for work, and then that's where I was
Mhm.
working when I decided to move to Japan.
And what triggered you like, start feeling like, oh, you want to move to Japan? Or you liked the
Um,
already culture before, or you didn't know about anything? Somebody actually told you, like, how did you even think about, about Japan?
I would say I came in here with no expectations. I didn't really know much about Japan, to be honest. Not really big into anime. I didn't know a ton about the culture other than just, the things that people had told me from their vacations. So I kind of came in here blind. My motivations were I really like languages. And I've always wanted to live somewhere abroad and practice and learn a new language. And I was also just kind of very comfortable where I was at in Charleston and sort of wanted to mix things up and challenge myself here.
Amazing. But it's there are 200 countries in the world. Why you chose Japan?
Well, I actually had a job opportunity here. So it was sort of like, here's an opportunity for me to stably go out and do this, and it's not too much of a financial risk. Sort of checks all the boxes of, I'd get to live abroad, get to challenge myself, try to learn a new language and really immerse into a new culture. So it just, it was kind of like in one way it was blind, in another way it lined up with everything that I wanted. So
Amazing. And then learning Japanese is the first time for you to learn the second language, or you have studied before?
I'd actually been learning Spanish for so I took a lot of Spanish in college and I
Mm-hmm.
got off of it for a while. And then maybe a couple of years ago, some friends and I went to Spain and I got back into it and I had been doing Duolingo and like gamifying my social media to feed me Spanish content and watching a bunch of movies in Spanish. So I'd kind of started doing some of the methodology that is taught here in Japan Language Factory with Spanish, trying to immerse myself as much as I could through digital mediums. Where I was lacking was more actual practice with speaking, which I kind of started getting into that later on using HelloTalk, having phone calls with people in Spanish. So I'd say that kind of helped me, I think, learn quicker with the third language. I'm by no means fluent in Spanish, but I've gotten further along than anything I've done before in a second language. And I'd say Japanese is coming much quicker, especially with this course focusing on speech. I'm jumping into conversations way more quickly than I ever did with Spanish, even though my vocabulary is way more limited and my knowledge of the rules and everything is still growing. Just getting in there and not being afraid to sound like an idiot, that part is much different than my experience with Spanish because I was trying to make sure I knew everything before I talked. And I've gotten better about that, but I think that this class complemented that very well.
Mm-hmm. You decided to learn Japanese. It's compared to maybe Spanish, it can be 10 times difficult. different characters. You cannot even read it. It's not even English alphabet. It's totally different. The millions of actual choice of learning. Some people start learning Japanese with Duolingo or even Rosetta Stone or other textbook. Why you chose Japan Language Factory over the other so many resources that you already knew from Spanish learning?
I think that I was interested in the methodology that, like you said, in the beginning courses, you talk about all the different mechanisms that you use to combine to get sort of a daily commitment to learning it, changing your media outlets to kind of like as much as possible to make it a day-to-day process, which I agreed with heavily from when I was making the most progress with learning Spanish. It was actually from that kind of learning over the college level stuff that I had done. Not to say that my college level education wasn't beneficial. I learned a lot of rules, a lot of grammar, and a lot of vocabulary. But starting to do these things with Hello Talk, talking with natives, watching movies, watching Instagram reels in the target language, doing all those things actually made me more, I don't know, comprehensive and understanding of day-to-day content and conversation than school did. Because when I was in school, I knew a lot, but I didn't process it quickly enough to do it like with all the rules that I was running through my head to actually be engaged in a conversation. So seeing the Japan Language Factory sort of prioritizing talking first, which was a huge contrast to how I had learned, and all the exposure elements that you encouraged as well, seemed to be a fun contrast to how I had learned before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. And then actually you moved to Japan already. How many
Yes,
days or weeks ago you moved to Japan?
I am on my third week now.
It's very new to Japan. How do you
So
feel?
my first 2 weeks here, my dad and my friend actually came out. So my dad
Mhm.
flew on the same flight with me. He left after the first week, and my friend came in at the tail end of that first week, and he stayed for the second week with me. So this is like actually my first week alone in Japan, and it's been going well. It actually pretty fun so far.
Amazing. What is actually your first impression? What you feel like this is like wow, like totally different or something totally different from your expectation before? What do you think?
I'd say, I mean, doing like apartment hunting and getting a car and stuff like that was kind of, sets it in like, wow, this is really happening. Learning about how all that works and finding an apartment as a foreigner was very different from what I've been used to in the United States. But I'd say that like, I don't know, the most apparent thing that at least I notice when I'm here is the culture. And I think my dad also agreed with me while he was here. It's just, he said that it kind of reminded him of when he was a kid in America, when things were everybody was a little bit more respectful of each other and felt a little bit more safe everywhere that he went. And he said that coming to Japan kind of reminded him of that time because you'll notice it's hard not to notice how respectful everybody is, and people will go way out of their way to help you if you're asking for just something very simple, and you kind of expect them to just say, "Oh no, I don't know." No, they're not going to tell you that. They're going to be like, "I don't know, but let me call everybody that I know over here to see if we can collectively help you find the answer to what you're looking for." And it's just they go above and beyond to help anybody here. So it's kind of shocking for an American, I suppose, to experience that.
Amazing. Right. And then are you using Japanese? All those actually the conversation, even as a beginner, of course you cannot handle 100% everything in Japanese, but overall, what do you think as a beginner?
I'd say yes, I'm very much a beginner still, but I've surprisingly had kind of lengthy conversations at this point now with people. The people that I can have the most conversation with typically know a little bit of English. And in some cases, actually, probably 50% of the time, they know about as much English as I know Japanese. So between the two of us, we're able to communicate and kind of have some easy conversations. But it's been fun. There's a lot of people that are eager to learn English here and willing to practice with.
Amazing. And can you imagine go to Japan with no Japanese, zero Japanese, you have to use Google Translate 100% versus you know something. Do you feel the differences?
Yeah, I would say like my dad and my friend, they were both interested in learning the language, but they didn't really make enough time to practice or do anything. And I would say that, they felt like embarrassed at times to try to interact. And I'm not saying that I was fluent or able to handle every situation, but I was definitely sort of acting as the liaison between everybody in certain places, the person that would respond to the questions or ask the questions to the employees if we're at like a restaurant or, does this train go here? Are we on the right train right now? Those kinds of things that they hadn't practiced yet at all, and it's very helpful to know some.
Amazing. This is amazing things because I know some students before visiting Japan language faculty, they already lived 3, 4 years in the US military community. They never really had even one local Japanese friend versus you start actually meeting locals is a huge difference.
Yes. And even just like having
Hmm.
a couple of prepared phrases, like what I had tried to practice with my dad and my friend is like probably one of the most useful phrases for me, at least, has been to be able to approach somebody and say politely, eigo ga wakarimasu ka? And just before you start spewing off your question in English or whatever you want to say, it's very, it's just kind of jarring if somebody approaches you and starts speaking a different language that you don't understand. So at least know how to ask them if they speak English. And like the basic other ones, like sumimasen and kudasai
Hmm.
if they're ordering something. When my friend was here, he was trying to get a little bit more conversational. And I think that conversation with locals opens pretty well if you say something like, Mara Nihongo Benkyou shiteru desu. And I find that people respond pretty well to that. And as Yui told me and predicted, they'd always, Nihongo jozo desu ne. And, you can kind of just say, Mara, Mara, Mara. And then it kind of goes from there, though. They know to speak a little bit slower with you from that phrase. They notice to use more basic sentences and it kickstarts everything into motion. So I've found that would be a tip to anybody wanting to try to start practicing their conversational skills.
Yeah, amazing. So, your life in Japan has been just started, but what is your plan so far? Are you going to stay in Japan pretty long time or just a couple of years? What is your plan?
Well, I just got an apartment and I got approved for the apartment rather, and I got a car. So my term here with my job is for 2 years, but it could go longer if I choose to sign on and do more. So I would say, I mean, 2 years is what I signed up for. I could see myself going longer, but it's still kind of early to tell. But I feel pretty confident that I'm going to enjoy 2 years at least here.
Amazing. And can you give us advice for the people who is even thinking to move to Japan from the States and also people actually just moved to Japan, but just difficult to start learning Japanese because, look at the Japanese sign. It's already scary to start learning, scary to even commit and make a time, because we are adults, you have to work, you have to take care of other things. And like, was it worth it? Maybe I just should use Google Translate. It's kind of scary to start, that's such a difficult language. So what is the advice?
I would say the language is far more important than I think some of the media might portray, because a lot of people will say that, oh, English is going to be fine. Well, they're probably tourists just going to like Tokyo. And sure, like at a lot of places in Tokyo where the tourist spots are, they've got a lot of staff that specifically they're hiring these staff members because of their language skills in English. But as soon as you're talking with, you get out of Tokyo or you're talking with places that don't deal with tourists very much, you'll see that English actually is not super common, at least a high level of English that would be required to do your day-to-day kinds of things. So language is very, very important, and it's better to get ahead of it than to put it off till when you get here. And I'd say a limited level of reading is kind of nice, because if you use, like for me, I use HelloTalk to communicate and practice conversation. Not all the messages are going to be voice messages. You can kind of ask people that you're working with to do that, but sometimes you pick up your phone and you don't feel like talking, or you're in a quiet room or whatever it is. So there's going to be some text back and forth, and you can ask your learners, hey, I only know, say, hiragana and katakana, and practice with limited reading and writing, just to add more day-to-day conversation. And a class like this or if you know a native that you can practice with, that's actually going to get you speaking, is very important. Because if you're just reading and you're just like memorizing rules and vocab, but you're not applying it, you're going to lock up when you're in a conversation, and even though you know what the words are that you're trying to say, they don't come out because you just haven't practiced saying them yet. And you say them in your head all the time, but you didn't open your mouth and actually do it yet. So practice by speaking with natives.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of people actually afraid of making time. Because you think it's study is like you think about like a college, high school, how much you study, sit down with a textbook, hours of study. Next day, maybe you don't remember. So that's kind of a traditional study. So by experiencing with the Japan language faculty, did you feel like you pushed too much to make a time, or it was pretty easy? What do you think?
No, I don't think I pushed too much. I'd say that it was probably even less time effort than what I had done for college level courses. So it's doable, but I think that if you're not making an effort to do something every single day consistently, some of the effort that you're putting in might be lost. So when I say put in a little bit every day, it really could just be 5 to 10 minutes, and those 5 to 10 minutes don't have to be 100% like I'm fully focused on this. Like I said, with putting on Instagram, and if I'm just sitting down to relax and scrolling through Instagram, I'm getting feed from Japanese comic videos or little skits that I would normally watch in English. And that's just a little bit of daily, oh, I heard him say that word. I recognize that word. Here's a new sentence structure. I knew 3 of those words, so I can kind of put together the other 2 that I missed. That must mean this. So it's just like little micro learning things every day with the classes that we're doing here at the Japan Language Factory, which I was on a schedule for about 2 sessions a week, which 2 hours a week was very manageable, and then just making a point to review it before the next lessons. So it wasn't too much to tackle, and I'm at a basic enough level now to handle most general situations here.
Amazing. Just a couple of months, 3, 4 months, and basic actually every day you can handle as a beginner is a very fast progress.
Well, the program was very effective, and my teacher was great. And I guess one more thing I forgot to mention, specifically to people that are interested in this course, one of the biggest advantages I thought was that you kind of get a lot of flexibility in driving what you want to learn and what you want to talk about. So I knew that I wanted to talk to people and socialize and make friends. And I was able to learn a lot of conversation topics about hobbies and things that I'm particularly interested in, like snowboarding, playing ping pong, playing board games, which is like kind of, I learned natural, casual ways from a native how to talk about these things I'm interested in. And that is very, very different from any kind of language course I've ever had. You usually learn it kind of one track on a specific set of rails, and this feels more personalized to where you want to say and use this stuff that you're learning. So it's very helpful in that regard.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Because that's actually our goal. If it's constantly learning and putting effort for the useless topics, in the end of the day, you can't use it tomorrow. And day by day, you start forgetting. A lot of people actually misunderstand I'm not good at learning language. And I ask, what did you learn? And then it's useless. It's not about
Yeah.
good at learning a language. It's about the things you learn. It can be useless. So you don't remember because you don't use it.
Duolingo would be an example of that. And I'm not knocking Duolingo because I love Duolingo, but sometimes the lesson is pushing me to learn, say, all the different words for an older sister, a younger sister, or like my grandmother, or whatever it may be that they're trying to introduce, which is great. It's useful to know these words. I'm not saying don't learn them, but like I don't have an older sister. I don't have every person that they're trying to introduce me on family roles. And I'm finding that I'm just getting like confused with every sentence, and I'm not even using those words in my day-to-day conversation. I'm typically talking about the things that I practice with Yui, which is like, how long have you been in Japan? What kinds of things do you like to do here? And what are your favorite hobbies? And how long have you been working in this job? Those kinds of things are what I do every day when I'm sitting at a bar or sitting in a restaurant and talking to somebody next to me, or whatever it may be. I'm not talking about my older sister who is an office worker. And that's useful eventually, I'm sure, as you get more advanced, but not when you're just learning.
Yeah, exactly. We have a limited time, and it's simply we have to memorize in order to speak different language. And simply we have to learn the things you can repeat So that's towards the actual deep memory. We need to learn the things you can repeat every day. So that's how we learn the native language.
That's a great point. Like, to somebody, politics might be a great topic to study if you love to talk about politics. And then you can come to this
Exactly.
course and your teacher will customize your lesson plan to talk about politics. But for me, I'm not going to be doing that. So I would rather have a more catered lesson plan for the kinds of stuff that I want to talk about. Exactly to your point.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alex.